Mitchell has his head up, takes LeVert. Oh, my! Donovan!
Get that weak stuff out of here!
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Jackson Flickinger. You can find the link to all of our work for Write Down Euclid and Fear the Sword in the description. The Cleveland Cavaliers are on a roll. They have won 3 games in a row. They improved to 21-15 on the season behind a win that was a little too close for comfort at the end against the Spurs. We're going to talk about the battle of the big men, Jarrett Allen and Victor Wembanyama. But I want to start off here, get your instant reaction, your first takeaway, Jackson. How did you feel about that game?
I didn't really feel too great about that game. It was kind of a poor showing by the first unit, which is never really what you want to see. You really want to be winning games with your starters. I know the Cavs are down a bunch of guys, so it's a little more nuanced than that. But the starters didn't really do a whole lot. Donovan, Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, they played good games, solid games. But then other than that, you really didn't get a whole lot. Isaac Okoro, 3 points in 27 minutes. Dean Wade, 0 points in 11 minutes. Max Strus, 8 points in 37 and a half minutes. That's not the offensive production that you're really looking for. This game was kind of turned around in the second quarter when you had Caris LeVert and Sam Merrill really provided a lot off the bench. Merrill's 12 points in the second quarter really turned a game that when he entered the game, they were down 14. And by the end of the second quarter, they were up 4 or 6, something like that. So that really turned around the game. And then Caris LeVert was really good in this game. This was one of the better Caris LeVert games we've seen this season. 9 of 13 from the field, 3 assists. Just a really good, strong game. And a good offensive game in a contest that the Cavs really struggled on that end. Outside of Allen and Mitchell. So a win's a win. It was bad late game offense, but after the game, Donovan said that you'd rather take lessons from wins as opposed to losses. So, that's good.
Great point. A loss is a lesson, but it's great to get them in a win too. And a win is definitely a win. The Cavs started this game pretty ugly, ended it pretty ugly, but in the middle, they did enough to get over the hump there. I do want to focus on Sam Merrill because, again, Cavs really, their offense was, it just, nothing was going in at the start. It looked very bad. I think the first 2 possessions were almost shot clock violations. I mean, they just couldn't get anything going against this Spurs team, which is not something that you want to say with this Spurs team.
No.
And then, of course, Caris LeVert ends the first quarter with that 6 points in like 2 seconds. So that was great. And then Sam Merrill comes in and really opens things up for them. He's like, you know what, guys? I got this. I'll take over from here, because I think he had 5 3-pointers in like his first 10 minutes of being out there on the floor. He's a guy who just has absolutely no hesitation shooting the ball, which is like the polar opposite of Dean Wade. We don't have to get into that right now because Dean Wade is really, he had that weak stretch that you have every season where you're like, maybe Dean Wade could actually, put it together a little bit, and then 0 points in however many minutes he played today. But to bring it back to Sam real quick, just such a quick trigger. He leads the NBA in 3-pointers per 100 possessions, which is just crazy stat. He's leading Stephen Curry in that category. He's also shooting better from the floor or from the 3-point line than Stephen Curry, which anytime you can do that, granted, small sample, but it's building. The sample size is getting bigger every day. So as long as he keeps playing like this, I think we're getting to the point, if we aren't already at this point, where Sam needs minutes on this team. Doesn't matter if they're fully healthy. He needs to play. And a night like tonight, or a day like today, shows you why.
Yeah, I mean, he just changes the game with how he's just moving on the court. Like, obviously, a game like today, he goes 5 for 9 from 3. It's really easy to say, oh yeah, like Sam Merrill needs minutes, but he's not going to go 5 for 9 every game. But that's okay because teams know that he can go 5 for 9 every game. At the end of the third quarter, somebody on the Spurs missed like a rotation over to Sam Merrill, and Jetty Osman just sprinted out to Sam, leaving Caris LeVert wide open on the wing for a 3 with like 2 seconds left. And those like standstill, effortless threes are really what, for somebody like Caris LeVert, who's a good 3-point shooter, that's kind of what Sam Merrill provides. It's not so much even like, oh, he can score 18 points one night. It's more so that, well, when he's out there, he can score 18 points, but he can also just create baskets by just running around, because really, like, when he gets the ball on the perimeter, teams panic. And when he's moving on the perimeter and he's one pass away, teams, just react in ways that they don't to anybody else on this team. Even Darius, Garland, teams don't close out like that to Darius. And that's what Sam provides. And it's really invaluable on the offensive end.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to how quickly he gets the shot off, because, Garland gets the shot off quick too, but like Sam has a shred of daylight. It's been so fun watching as the scouting report is officially out now and people know that Sam is a guy he's going to get on the floor and he's going to drill you from deep if you don't get out there. It's just been so fun watching defenders scramble to get out there. And I also think Sam does a very good job. He's not an elite playmaker by any means, but he knows how to use his gravity. He understands when the defense is overcommitting, closing out too hard on him, and he can find open teammates. So that's an aspect of his game that I've really enjoyed. And he's also using that as an opportunity to attack the closeout himself and get to the rim. Now, he got blocked again by Victor Wembanyama, which is going to happen. He got blocked a few times against Washington as well, but the fact that he is attacking those closeouts, not settling for bad shots or just letting the ball die in his hands and not being aggressive, those are all good qualities to have. And I think, like I said, Sam has definitely earned a spot in this rotation. I want to talk about Karis LeVert.
I do like that you brought up him attacking closeouts. I think this is something that I really want to see him improve on in the G League. Like, after the first, I'd say, like 2 weeks, everybody knew that, like, you got to run this guy off the line. You got to not, like, let this guy touch the ball. And in the G League, when he was going to the basket, he was finishing pretty good at the basket. And we see
he
that
hasn't finished too well yet.
Right. Well, his first, I think, like up until like this week, I think he was like okay, like not good, but okay. But then like
more recently, he's been getting stuffed.
Right. Like today, that he went up against Victor, and it wasn't good.
As you would expect.
Right. And it's like he needs to figure out a little counter to that, or like just be okay with dribbling it back out, or like dribbling it to the corner or something like that if a pass doesn't open. Like, you don't want to see him play scared, because guys who play scared aren't good basketball players. Like, that's when we talk about Isaac Okoro. I feel like sometimes at his worst he plays scared. Same with like Dean Wade. So like, you're okay with him getting blocked at the rim a couple times, but it's like it happened like 3-4 times this weekend. So it's like maybe let's work on that just a little bit. But he does do a good job of using his gravity to get other people open. He's a good passer. I believe he had 3 assists today. He had multiple assists the last game too. This is something that he's good at, but let's work on that just a little bit.
I agree with that. And to your point about not playing scared, I think that's a reason why, the Max Strus conversation has been heating up more recently on Twitter. People are questioning kind of the impact and everything, because his shooting splits aren't exactly ideal for the caliber of shooter you want him to be, but it's just the volume. I mean, he, again, another guy who isn't afraid to shoot. He's first in the NBA in catch and shoot 3-pointers. He's letting that thing fly. And even if they aren't always going in, just that you have someone out there who's willing to do that, something the Cavs didn't have last year, and I think it has helped this team. I want to talk about Karis LeVert because he did have a great game. That end of game stretch was a little rough for the Cavs as a whole, and I know that you asked JB post game about the late game execution. He didn't seem too concerned, but why don't you take me through that? I think they went scoreless the final 3 minutes of this game. They had a 13-point lead, came down to a desperation heave at the buzzer. Really, this game should have gone into overtime if Victor just took a shot at the rim. But go ahead, walk me through kind of your take on their late game execution.
So this kind of reminded me of the Toronto game where Donovan Mitchell, like, you just look at it, what was it, like 30 seconds left? He just took a really bad 3, down 2, and you're like, Donovan, what are you doing? But you kind of have to rewind, because with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, he attacks. Isaac Okoro's defender just like is standing in the restricted area, so he kicks it out to Isaac. Isaac misses his 3. He does the same thing with 58-ish seconds left, He did the same thing. Isaac missed the 3. So then the next, his the final time down, he just says, okay, I'm just going to have to take the 3 because I can't get to the basket and I'm not passing it back out to Isaac. And I think Scotty Barnes came over the screen a lot more than he was anticipating when he first went up. So it was a really bad shot, but it happens in context where I think if do you want him to keep trusting Isaac? And I think if Isaac's on the floor, you have to keep trusting him and probably make the defense give him a third chance to do it. But
just to that point real quick, Isaac has to take that shot too. I know some people were upset that he took it. If he's out there and you're open, got to take that shot.
Right. So you want him to take that shot. So it's not a shot at Isaac. It's just kind of the defense is going to say, yes, we'd rather Isaac Okoro take that shot than Donovan Mitchell to finish at the rim or take a pull-up 3. So that's kind of what's always going to be presented to you. And then this game, I felt like this was a tough game because I don't remember entirely who was out there at the end against the Raptors, but against the Spurs tonight, they decided to close with Isaac, Strus, LeVert, basically no 4. And kind of that same thing presented itself where they were closing out a bunch, and then Donovan wasn't really wanting to trust Isaac in those situations, and JB tried to get Sam back out there for the offense defense switch, but then it was he did for the free throws, but he tried to get him out before then, but it was when I forget what happened, but for whatever reason, the jump ball after the after the challenge, they had to take him back out. So it's he tried to do that, but it's kind of, that's the problem that the Cavs are in right now, is that they don't have a 4 that you can trust. You don't have Niang. If you could trust Niang and you had Niang closing instead of Isaac Okoro, that makes the defense isn't doing that to that level, but Niang hasn't. You are the Niang respecter here, but I don't think he certainly hasn't shown that he deserves to close games.
Wouldn't trust him.
And Dean Wade isn't taking those shots. So if Donovan did find him in the corner, it'd be a record scratch. So that's where you have these problems where yes, we both agree that Sam Merrill needs minutes, but it's really tough to get Sam Merrill minutes when you don't have a 4. So you're not going to go with Donovan. I mean, I would, but I don't think JB's comfortable enough to go with a Donovan, Karras, Strus, Merrill, Allen closing lineup. And it's fair. I think this game you might have been able to get away with it because the Spurs are they're not they don't have a bruising 4 that's really gonna make Strus pay or anything like that. But you kind of see the hesitation there where you're really putting a lot on Allen's shoulders and making everybody else kind of guard up a position, I guess. So, that's where you're gonna keep running into these problems when you aren't fully healthy. If you have Darius Garland, Caris LeVert / Max Strus out there, Isaac's not going to be in those spots, so you're not going to have those issues. So I think I don't want to blame this on Isaac because that's not what I'm trying to do. Just kind of when you have a kind of a team that doesn't really make sense with the pieces that are all still there, you're going to have these issues. So I don't know. Long term, I'm still a little concerned just because last year they were pretty rough in these type of situations. So that kind of carries over. And then this year, these last couple of games, they have been rough in these situations, but fully healthy, they're going to have other issues like a Mobley Allen issue as opposed to this one. And I guess if you have Mobley and Allen and Garland, you can play different. You have multiple different pieces to work with. So maybe in a matchup, you take Mobley or Allen off, or maybe, you have more pieces to work with, basically. So it just makes it a little easier. So long term, I don't know if it's a huge issue. Short term, yes, it's a big issue.
Yeah, the late game execution has been a bit of a mixed bag, really, the last 2 years for the Cavs, even the last 3 years, really. One thing that I thought was interesting today, though,
Lowry was great late game, so don't put the last 3
well,
years.
I was thinking of like the last few months of the 2021 season when they kind of blew a couple of close games. But granted,
when like Rajon Rondo was closing.
I know.
That was bad.
Well, okay, the point is, today there was an interesting issue that I don't think they've really dealt with too often this year, maybe in shades. But like what I thought was really interesting is just they struggled to beat the press against San Antonio, which isn't something you really say about an NBA team very often. Like that's usually like a high school basketball problem, or college, you can't break a press. But I think the fact that you had Okoro out there, LeVert's a good ball handler, but really like the point that I'm getting, when you don't have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell both sharing the floor who can break a press all on their own, I think the Spurs did a really good job of forcing the ball out of Mitchell's hands into LeVert, into Okoro, and these guys who weren't really as comfortable bringing the ball up. And that really halted their offense late game. They got into their sets way too late in the shot clock. They turned it over on that challenge, the replay review. And it just seemed like the press really threw them for a loop, which isn't something that you normally expect. And I think that's maybe a product of having Okoro out there, or even Merrill, who isn't like the greatest ball handler. So that was something that I found interesting. And also, I just have to bring it up. Caris LeVert attempting that shot with like 3 seconds left. I don't know what that was all about. Maybe I'll try to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that against 99% of people who have ever played basketball, that's an open layup. But when Wembanyama is behind you, he can catch that. So maybe he just wasn't accustomed to having that type of length next to him. But still, I mean, just dribble the clock out, get to the free throw line, anything but that. The Spurs almost stole one from us off of that play.
Yeah, and like Sam did the right thing, and Caris, if you think it's uncontested, like if it's an uncontested layup, that's the only reason why you go up. I guess the awareness wasn't. I guess he didn't sense Wemby, but yeah, that was bad. There's really no way. There's really nothing else. But I do like when you're talking about like the press and stuff, because the best teams, they have just, when you think of like the Thunder, like everyone can pass, shoot, and dribble on the court at all times, and the Cavs have like they have Donovan Mitchell, and they have Caris LeVert. I think those are, and I would throw Max Strus into that category. But that's. Well, they had Strus inbounding was another problem, which can help you break a press too. But it just, the Spurs really gave them problems with this. Right, but that's where the Cavs are just a team full of specialists, and that's where you see these problems, and that's why you get concerned about like a playoff series where like, yeah, you know, like I like Sam Merrill a lot, but like in a playoff series, I don't know how. He's not going to be helpful in every context just because he is a limited player. And then you kind of go down the list like, well, Isaac may not be helpful in every context because he's a limited player. He can't pass, shoot, and dribble consistently. Dean Wade can. You know, like George Niang, even like Craig Porter Jr., he can, like, he's not somebody who has shown that he can shoot consistently. So it's just like, that's where you're like, you have concerns about this team. And then when you press a team like that, that's where they're going to run into problems because you can't have somebody like Isaac Okoro break the press. So yeah, I agree. Let's move into our tweet of the week because a very special someone made their return to the land this weekend, and that person would be Cedi Osman. He didn't play too well tonight. He shot 1 of 4 from deep. I believe he was a -19, but you know, he went to the Charge game. He was so gracious to take the time out of his day to take a picture with me and Jackson. If you can see us, these very blurry blobs in the top left corner there. It's great to get to take a picture with a Cleveland legend. He left before the crowd could mob him for autographs, but he got a tribute video today. One of the best fan favorites in Cavs history. Jackson, how was it to be back, to feel Cedi's presence back in the land? It was great. You know, just... I was hoping to see more from Cedi today. Not really a great game. I thought it was fitting that he aired his first 3, but I thought that meant that, the next 4 are like going in, but that didn't happen. But this would have been such a great picture if portrait mode didn't exist. So thank you. So thank you, Apple, for ruining lives. That's really what just happened here. But yeah, it was, it was good to see Jetty. It was interesting that you got like the bad Jetty experience today. Like he certainly wasn't the reason why the Cavs bench went on a big run, but you were like, oh yeah, this was a bad Jetty game. But everyone knows January and February, you just don't play Jetty those months. Those are not Jetty months. You go like October through December, those are Jetty months, and then like March and April, those are Jetty months. But January and February, he just doesn't like the cold, I guess. It gets cold outside, so does his outside shot.
Exactly. I'm glad we have the Jetty expert to break us down all the different seasons for Jetty here. But good point that I did want to bring up. The Cavs bench had 60 points tonight. That was pretty big for them. It wasn't all bad if you're a Jetty fan. The game itself wasn't that great for Jetty, but do have some good news with our other tweet of the week. After months, and I do mean literally months, of Brad campaigning for some free donuts, the Cavs finally made it happen. He finally manifested his dreams. They gave him a couple free donuts is what it sounded like. And, I love to see a man's dreams come true. So had to highlight Brad finally made it happen there.
You're going to have to give me some background on this because I've been to most home games. So I don't.
So you've missed out on this saga.
Right. So what is
if anyone hasn't been paying attention or just missed out on this, every time the Cavs do an instant replay that's sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts, Brad has just been begging for free donuts the entire time, saying, we get free donuts with this sponsorship, right? Like, when do I get my jelly-filled donut? And that doesn't look like a jelly-filled donut to me, but he was happy nonetheless. He said there was a couple donut holes in there for him, too. He did not share them with John Michael, so, it is what it is. But Brad has been a treat for Cavs fans over these last 2 years, and I'm glad that he got the treat in return for his hard work.
Tony, those are called munchkins. I don't know if
he called them donut holes. Some people call them donut holes, other people call them munchkins.
But that's what
Brad's a donut hole kind of guy. Well, I guess someone will have to inform him because you don't want to mess up that sponsorship money.
I think
by using the wrong names there.
I think Brad somehow thinks that like Dunkin' Donuts is sponsoring him and not like the product on the floor, which is good. So like maybe Donovan deserves a donut, not Brad, but that's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, we'll let him go.
Now I think is a good time to transition into talking about the big man down low. Jarrett Allen has been in absolute beast mode the last few weeks. Another big game tonight, 29 points, 16 rebounds. It's his 7th straight double-double. He's been on a rampage, rebounding, playmaking, scoring. I want to ask you, what has Jarrett Allen shown you in this last 2 weeks, and what is he doing differently?
He showed me a lot, really. I know it's easy to say like he's playing more aggressive, and that's kind of what's causing it, but I think it's a lot more than that. They're able to use him above the 3-point line as a ball handler and as like a passer, and use him in more dribble handoffs up there, which has really opened up the entire offense for him and for, the entire team. And I think that's what's been different. And when he's doing that, it either forces like the center to come up to the level of the screen and try to contest like Max Strus or Donovan Mitchell coming up around those screens, or it, or like the center has to come up and then Jarrett can get to the basket. He had that dunk where he put Gafford through the rim on Friday, and that was kind of why, just because he had to come up to the level of the screen, and then Allen gets back door, Gafford's off balance. That's what happens. So that's what I really like, but my concern is that doesn't work the same way if Mobley's just chilling in the dunker spot. So I don't know how the Cavs are able to replicate this with Mobley back, and that's a cause for concern. Not that they can't, because I think that you can, but you have to get more creative. But one of the things that I really like, so like he has 4 assists per game since the announcement of the Mobley injury, he's assisting on 19% of made shots when he's on the floor, which is in like the 83rd percentile for bigs. That's a ton. And he's doing this without really turning it over. So you really like that. And then also like he's just getting a ton of rebounds, a ton of offensive rebounds, which hasn't really been his game. He's getting 14.7% of missed shots when he's on the floor.
Good.
That's crazy. And then like the attention he's drawing also creates more. So that's really, really been impressive. But how much of that is going to, carry over to when Mobley comes back? That's one thing. But what will carry over, I think, is that the more comfortable he is touching and dribbling the ball, the better off it is for this entire team. When we think about the Knicks series last year, what happened? They just kept, anytime there was a ball screen, Garland or a Mitchell, they would double the ball, force it out to Mobley and Allen in the short roll. They would kind of short circuit, and then it would be a turnover, missed shot, something bad.
A lot of bad. They're
not like, Allen's not working in the short roll a ton. He is still doing it, but him just being more comfortable handling the ball and having it in his hands and just playing basketball, that's really going to be helpful. So it's not going to be a one-to-one translation when Mobley's back, or at least there's a lot of things that can hinder that from happening. But things like handling the ball could and should transfer over.
Yeah, that's the big question, is how much of this can transfer when Mobley is out there. Obviously, the style will change a little bit, but as of right now, I've just been really impressed with the reads that he is making. Of course, a lot of this is the aggression that he's been playing with, but it also just comes down to making smart basketball plays, and credit to JB and the Cavs for using him in a different way and getting creative with this. You mentioned the dribble handoffs, attacking someone who's in drop. When the defender who's guarding Allen is in drop like that and you flow straight into a dribble handoff, you're basically playing 2-on-1 with, Max Strus as defender, Donovan Mitchell, whoever it may be. And that has created a lot of openings for the Cavs. It's generated a lot of clean looks. But the thing that's really impressed me is that Allen, he isn't just, okay, I'm running a dribble handoff here and that's the play. If he realizes that he has a runway to attack his man in drop, he goes right at him. If he realizes, okay, I'm going to hold on to this one, drop it over the top to a cutter, he'll do that. He's been making some great reads as a playmaker. And like you mentioned on that big dunk, and there's been a handful of plays where he's done this, when that defender finally does come up and play him at the level, he's very athletic. He's very quick for his size, and he has no problem getting right around opposing big men. He has great footwork. He's very nimble for his size. I think it's something that we've forgotten over the last year or so because he hasn't had as many opportunities to dribble from the three-point line and attack. It's a lot of dump-off passes and lobs, but Jarrett Allen's great attacking off the dribble, and he's really shown that recently. He's been super aggressive. He's been finishing everything. He's been rebounding everything. You talked about the offensive rebounding. That has been huge. I think a big part of that is the Cavs, I think since December 16th, are number one in the NBA in three-point attempts, which leads to more long rebounds, which Jarrett Allen has been gobbling all of those up too. And it's just been great to see him put this stretch together. And it's something that I hope carries forward, whether it's the exact style carrying forward or just the confidence that he has built here. I hope that it translates.
One of the things that Donovan said, I think it was after Friday's game, he was talking about how when he was out, there was like a graphic on Bally Sports that said like Jarrett Allen shooting 60% from the mid-range, which he is. And Donovan was like, wow, I didn't know that. So I've been telling him to just, every time you catch the ball like near the free throw line, to just go up with it if you're open. And he's done that. He's still shooting 60% on those shots, especially those little like push shots from like just inside the free throw line. And I know that like when we talk about mid-range shots, it's usually like not a good thing, but that's usually because we talk about Caris LeVert when we talk about that. So that's different. But somebody like Allen being more comfortable in a shot that he's shown to be decent at would be really helpful, because if you looked at that Knicks series, it would be like, which we will be talking about this series for the rest of our lives. It would be like they would when he would get it in the short roll, it'd be a 3-on-4, but like the two defenders would go back to Mobley to kind of make sure he can't get an easy pass to Mobley or like dribble into a dunk. So him just being more comfortable, like, oh, I can take this 12-footer, I can take this 15-footer, I'm being empowered to take this shot. That's going to, if you're hitting that at 60%, that's a good possession, So that's a really big development too. I don't know if he had any mid-range shots this game, but just overall, like these little things, even if it's not like directly going to translate, like just having more confidence, and if he can carry that into a playoff setting, that's really going to help this team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The last thing I want to talk about with Allen here, because it's, the campaign is building, the agenda has been pushed. Do you think Jarrett Allen has an all-star case? Now, it's tough to get in the Eastern Conference, and if there's an injury reserve, I think his chances go up a lot. I think with the way he's been playing, he's absolutely deserving of consideration. Will he actually get in the game? It's going to be kind of tough, especially because the whole season, the beginning, it wasn't too great for him. His season numbers don't look too great when you look at it. If you look at the last couple weeks, and if the coaches and the people who decide this stuff are paying attention, they'll get pretty strong consideration. Might need an injury reserve to get in there, but what do you think of Jarrett Allen's all-star case?
I feel like anytime somebody's playing like a top 40 player, everyone just says they should be an all-star, but really there's like 25 all-stars. So, you got to push some people out. And I don't know if you know this, but like centers aren't the most exciting all-star players. So they're not really putting a bunch of centers in there. Jarrett's really lucky that he got an all-star appearance when he did, because he probably didn't super deserve it. Just it being in Cleveland really helped, Adam Silver said, "We got you, Cleveland. This is for you." So, I mean, like, yes, Jarrett was great, but it's just that like those type of centers don't really get into all-star games.
Yeah.
So
and the Cavs were, top 3 in the East at the time.
They were
helps.
Like 2.
Yeah, they were up there, and this year right now they're 4th, but they're not gonna be a top 3 team come all-star break. So
he's playing phenomenal, and he's playing up to his capability, and he's playing quote unquote like an all-star. He's not going to be an all-star no matter how many times. I don't know if you. I mean, have you tweeted how many times, like during interviews, it's like this whole like echo chamber where like the Cavs, every time the Cavs talk, they say anybody from the Cavs and they talk about Jarrett Allen, they say he should be an all-star, and then
he's playing like Wilt.
And then the reporters ask him, "Is Jarrett playing like an all-star? Does Jarrett deserve to be an all-star?" So then he just keeps saying that, and then like people are walking by today. Jarrett was doing an interview, and Isaiah Mobley walked by and yelled, "Jarrett's an all-star," and it's like, cool. Like,
hey, listen,
it
sometimes you got to speak things into existence,
right?
Okay, it's part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Brad was an all-star because he had a pretty good, offensive bag.
Pretty good basketball player.
Yeah. So I don't know if, like Jarrett Allen, I don't know if he's inspiring players and coaches not on the Cavs the same way, but he's playing great. So it's like, I don't want to take anything away from how he's playing. Like, this is the best version of Jarrett Allen. A lot of playing basketball is context driven, and he's in a really good context, and that's great. But 11 good games, 11 solid games,
not enough.
It's not going to do it. So sorry guys, but
I'm still gonna push for it, even though I know it's unlikely. And it's because you know what, I just want to see the guy get in there. I don't think he's the most exciting all-star player. Like, as you said, centers aren't exactly the most exciting people to get in there, but I would still like to see it just for my own selfish reasons.
Have they announced anything about All-Star Weekend besides the All-Star Game? Like, I feel like I don't know anything about the Skills Challenge or like anything
coming up.
Right. So like maybe
once they announce the starters,
maybe they like made the Skills Challenge something interesting, which it hasn't been for the last 30 years. So I can't imagine that changing, but maybe there's some Skills Challenge he can be in.
Hopefully
or something.
Sam Merrill will be in the 3-point contest.
That's what we should be talking about. I haven't heard anybody say that, but like,
We'll have to start pushing that.
I don't know. Is the 3-point is that too easy for Sam Merrill? Are those too good of looks? He may not be able to handle that.
It's not fair. He's got
right. He needs to have
him.
Right. So
it wouldn't be good for the league. They need one of the big names to win it. They can't have a guy from Cleveland, Sam Merrill, winning it. No one knows who that is.
Well, that's not my fault.
I'm just making fun of how national media talks about.
We need to look into the 3-point shooting rules. Can you start on one rack, take one, shoot it, run to the next, and then just keep doing like a merry-go-round all the way around? Because I think Sam would be a lot better there. But if you make every single
motion
one
shooting.
We
haven't seen anyone bring the motion shooting into the 3-point contest. That's a good idea.
Maybe he does 2 and then goes to the next one and just comes back. I'm just saying. I think that's something that I would suggest that. So that's. But yeah, poor Jarrett Allen. I don't know, but good for him because we don't need him to get roasted on Twitter again. Because then
he's been through enough. I'm glad that a lot of people are sending in their apologies to Jarrett Allen. But while we're talking about 3-point shooting, I think this is the most natural way to transition to Emoni Bates. Set a new career high for the G League with 38 points. He's shooting 22 of 44 from deep over his last 4 games, which is pretty ridiculous. He's a microwave scorer. Charge head coach Mike Garrity just flat out said, I just laugh at some of the shots he makes sometimes. He had a stretch of 3 straight threes, which when we were watching in the game, I did not realize how deep he was shooting those 3-pointers from because we were on the other side of the court. When you posted those videos of him shooting, I was blown away. I was like, I can't believe he was pulling up from that deep behind the 3-point line. He is just a flamethrower from deep. But the thing that really stood out to me when we talked to him at the end of the game is just the perspective that he has, not only of basketball, but of himself. He is such a self-aware player. The first thing that he said when we asked him about, what aspect of your development are you most proud of, right off the heels of a career-high 38-point scoring night, he talked about his defense. He talked about buying into the defensive end, no longer just being a spectator, but trying to be an active member of the defense. And the head coach said the same thing. He said this was probably the best defensive performance he has had all season. Doesn't mean he's a lockdown defender by any means, but Monty talks a lot about improving 1% better every day. And this is the way to do it. Having that mentality, going out there and taking these steps every day. What is your take on Emoni Bates and his time in the G League so far?
So one thing he really benefits from is that the Charge have a massive center court logo. So it always looks like he's
the logo
shots.
Were a little generous, but they're still deeper than I expected when I was watching.
So yeah, they were super deep, but you're but when you're there, you're like, why is the logo 2 feet from the 3-point line? So that's one thing. But yeah, I really like his it's hard not to like his 3-point shooting because there are really tough shots that he's making and he makes them look effortless. One of the things that I feel like I keep saying, and I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but the ball just sounds different when he makes them because there's just so much spin on the ball, and it's the same with his misses. They just ricochet everywhere. It's wild. It's like a golfer who puts a lot of spin on a wedge shot, which I know Tony, huge golfer, so he gets that. But so it's just it's really impressive, his shooting, and I think what he needs to keep improving on is how to get those shots, because one of the things that we saw in summer league is he wasn't really moving off ball. He was more he was doing the Dylan Windler, where Dylan Windler would just kind of keep drifting further behind the 3-point line to get shots because, teams usually stay by the 3-point line when they're guarding people. And now teams yesterday, after he makes a couple threes, they're picking him up at half court. So how can he get looks off then? He needs to keep getting more comfortable running off screens, something he's talked about, he's getting better at. But I think there's a lot more room to improve, especially relocating. One of the things that I love about Sam is every time he passes the ball, he's gone before the ball reaches its target. He's already trying to go to his next spot. And Emoni's doing that, but he's doing it at a slower pace. He needs to be
you can see him thinking through it.
Right, like I passed it. Now I need to move. Like he needs to be
Yeah.
like the same time so he can because like the pass, like your defender kind of like freezes a little bit during that pass, so you have that like extra like millisecond to kind of like create some separation. And he has a quick enough shot where if he creates any separation, he can get it up and it's a clean look. He's also like 6'9". He's huge. So that's really good. And that's one of the things that I really want to see him improve on. Because he really needs to rely on those 3-point shots because his handle is still leaves a lot to be desired, I think. Like I don't
His
think
finishing could use some work.
Right. And one of the things is that like one of the things that I like say a lot is that you can't really count the stuff in the restricted area, or at least you have to look at it with skepticism, just because the big man play in the G League is that's the biggest drop off between the NBA and the G League is there are no good centers in the G League. Like you think about like Robin Lopez has been on an NBA roster for like 5 years and he's been awful. And but he's considerably better than like any G League center that you're going to get. So it's like if you're not finishing against in the G League consistently, you're not going to just go to the NBA and do that. And which it's fine. He's 19. He needs to grow physically and stuff. But like if you're saying, hey, like we want to give you minutes tomorrow, he needs to generate more 3-point shots and use his gravity in a better way. And he's improving, but that's where he needs to like, that's what I would look at if I am watching the games. But if you, the viewer / listener are watching, that's something that I would keep an eye on is just like off ball movement and stuff like that. Cause it has improved considerably, but there's also, there's still room. But the defense, one of the things that I will say is that long term, I'm not like super concerned about his defense just because when you have somebody who's 6'9", I know he doesn't have like a huge wingspan. It's a lot easier. Like your margin for error is so much more than like a Sam Merrill 6'4", not super athletic guy. Like Emoni's not super athletic, but he's 6'9". So like you can find places to put him. I think especially if he becomes a better rebounder, this is a lot easier. That's why Garrett has talked about his rebounding, because it's like if he can rebound like a 4, then in many years he could maybe even play a 4. So it's like that's where you want to see growth. I think he falls asleep still on the defensive end, especially off ball. And when his shot's not going in, he falls asleep way more than when his shot is going in. When he gets locked in, he's fine. But like when he's like not getting his 3-point shots off, he can fall asleep. So, and really that's not the end of the world. Everyone falls asleep. Not everyone, but it's not the end of the world, but
it's easier to be engaged on both ends when your shot's falling.
Right. Like when you have 38 points, I'd be locked in defensively if I had 38 points. So like, it's a lot easier to do. And those are some of the areas that like you really want to see him improve, because the shot is there. And it's crazy where like one of the things that like he has that like, someone like Merrill doesn't have is that like he's such a good pull-up 3-point shooter. So as soon as he takes the ball like over over like half court, it's like the defense was just like on him. Like they were like freaking out. Like we can't, like they're like face guarding him. So it's like he has such an elite offensive skill. And the things that you look for most is shooting and size. He has both. So you can work with that. It's just he needs to keep working at how to maximize both.
Yeah, that's the point of emphasis with him in terms of his offensive development, is learning how to move off ball. Unbelievable talent as a shooter, stationary pull-up shooting. The one skill that he's always had to work on, he's getting better, as we said, is moving off a ball, coming to the ball when he's coming off of screens, having his defender actually chase him. A lot of times he'll come off the screen and kind of just wait for it. It's good to actually, follow through on that. I know he doesn't follow through on his actual shot and it doesn't matter, but when you're coming off of a screen, going through the full motion will help a lot in terms of separating yourself from your defender. something that we saw in this game towards the end of the game, when defenders started to face guard him, again, we mentioned this, a little too slow to go backdoor on them. He did go backdoor and he got a couple passes there, but he wasn't able to take a shot because the defense had already rotated over. If this is a situation where he dumps the ball to the big man and then goes backdoor right away, rather than it looked like he wanted another 3-point shot and then just kind of took what the defense was giving him. He starts to use his gravity a little more and recognize, like, okay, they're face guarding me. I'm going to, shade up and then go backdoor. That could generate a lot of easy looks for him. And you mentioned, hey, if he keeps playing like Dylan Windler, then he's going to set a G League record for rebounds, which is what we want from him. So
right,
wouldn't be too mad at that.
One of the things that I think is always important to talk about with any of these guys, like any of prospects, I guess, or anybody who's like under 20, is that like in the NBA, 98% of guys are going to be forced to play roles that didn't quite get them to the NBA. So like Dylan Windler, which is great that you brought him up. Like one of the things that Windler really struggled to do is transition from being, I'm at Belmont, I'm the man, I take shots off the dribble, I attack off the dribble, I'm just like the guy. And when he gets to the NBA, like that's not what his role is. So he needs to become a off-ball player, and for a variety of reasons that never really transferred over. So it's like Emoni, he's never been an off-ball player, especially when you look at like his Central Michigan. He was so on ball and so like really, the focal point of everything. And he struggled doing that. So he's going to have to keep learning how to play this role. And it's not something that you're going to learn overnight because, nobody learned that overnight. Like even like Sam Merrill, for example, he was an on-ball player in college. He didn't just come to the NBA and just be a movement shooter. He's continued to progress in that area, and he's 27.
I was going to say he's 27. It took him this long to finally everything came together for him.
Right.
So
it's
patience
like,
is the key.
Yeah, Emoni's 19, and he's playing a completely different game. So that's where it's like, yeah, he's scoring 38 points, but like, we can say like, well, he could give minutes, but it's like, it's probably not in his best interest to do that because he just needs to learn how his game is best going to translate to the NBA. And if he becomes like a super valuable off-ball player, let's say, for example, he develops a skill set that allows him to finish at the rim, like that off-ball playing is going to it's going to be beneficial and like helpful. Like when you talk about Steph Curry, it's his like it all starts with how he moves off ball. Like everything he does on ball is made possible because of how he moves off ball. So this is all beneficial, and this is something that Emoni needs to go through, and he's not really going to be featured in a way in the NBA that's going to allow him to do that. So like this is very important. So let's just like keep an eye on him while he's in the G League, but also like he's not like, should be getting minutes over George Niang or something like that.
That took a lot for you to say, I could tell.
Well,
the slightest compliment to my boy Niang, I'll take it. I do agree 100% with everything you said. To wrap this all back up with how I started, I think the good thing is he has the right perspective. He knows what he needs to improve. Of course, doing it and saying it are two different things, but he clearly has the right perspective of where he needs to be as a player. He is taking that challenge to be better every day, and again, keep an eye on it.
I think it's really good. Like I can't imagine the Emoni Bates experience going much better than it has, just because he's completely bought in. He's bought into a G League role. He's bought into like, I need to, like what got me on the cover of Sports Illustrated is not what's going to get me on an NBA floor. And he's bought in completely. He said, hey, like I'm going to get G League, like I'm going to make the most of my G League time. I'm going to keep working on it. I understand that like he's not saying this, but like his actions are showing this. Like in the beginning of the year, talked to him after one of the beginning G League games, and he was kind of like, oh yeah, like this is really good, but like, I hope that I can kind of do this in the NBA or like get minutes soon. And you're just like, that's not like that's just not really realistic right now with this Cavs team, and not in his best interest. So it's like I think he's buying into that more.
Yeah, it would be so easy for anyone in his position right now to see all the openings on this Cavs team with the injuries they have and to kind of be upset or bitter, whatever. He hasn't shown any of that at all. He absolutely, it seems like he's fully rallied behind even Craig Porter Jr., someone who we probably expected to spend a lot of time in the G League with. He could easily feel resentment for that or anything, but he hasn't. He's taken all the correct steps, just the correct approach to his development up to this point. So I'm excited to see how he continues to develop. It's going to be a long-term project, but one step at a time, 1% better every day, as he says.
I really like the bring up Craig Porter Jr. here because he's 23 and he has such a great feel for the game that when he gets on the court, he's like maximizing his skill set and it translates over so that he is really valuable in a situation where he's playing with like better talent, like because that's just how his game is. So that's where Emoni needs to like, keep progressing because he doesn't, he hasn't played in this position and he doesn't have that natural feel for the game, I think. And that's just kind of comes with being the best shooter ever and being not the best shooter ever, but like the best shooter he's playing with when he's playing against 15 and 16-year-olds. Yeah. And he's taller than them and can get a shot off wherever. So he doesn't have to work to use his skill. Now he has to work to use his best skill. And that's why, when he went into college, things didn't go well because he was playing against other athletes that didn't allow him to just shoot over them constantly.
Yeah, I agree. That's going to do it for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. I want to thank everyone for watching or listening. Please consider subscribing and go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs. First off, we do want to wish a happy birthday to John. He's the only person who would possibly listen 52 minutes into this podcast / YouTube video. So thank you for your support. And also, Brian, we know that you're still here. So thank you as well.